Yeah, my name is Marcus Cobb from Jammber, Jamber. At Jammber, we like to say that we want to be the shortest distance between creating professional experiences and sharing those with the world. Another way to say that is bringing art and commerce closer together.
Welcome to Innovator Tribe Outside the Bubble,
a show about bridging the gap between the inspiration of an idea to the creation of a product.
What's up, Ahmad?
What's good, Toye? How you feeling, man?
Yeah, I'm feeling really good, man. InnovatorTribe.com is up and it's improved, and it's all because of you. If you guys haven't yet, go to InnovatorTribe.com. Go check out our new site. It's a lot crisper. I think it definitely represents the brand well, and shout out to you, man, for getting that done and knocking that out.
Oh man, I appreciate those kind of words. I had the help of Squarespace, but it was nice to do another iteration, a new facelift, if you want to say. And I was at this pitch competition a couple of days ago, and there were some people that I told about the podcast early in the earlier days, and they were happy to see the next iteration and the growth from all of our past guests. So I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. And you can always, like for our listeners, there's a really, when you go to the site, there's a share feedback section there. Just innovatortribe.com/feedback to be able to share your feedback. We really need that to help us being able to know future growth and things and enhancements to improve innovatortribe.com. So yeah, man, thanks for the feedback.
For sure. That actually leads into our episode, because I feel like this conversation that we had with Marcus Cobb, the founder of Jammber, is really about paying attention to the customer and understanding what they're looking for, right? And he goes into detail about how they went through the customer discovery process, which led them to building Jammber. Jammber is a platform that manages the entire music production process, keeping track of everyone involved, making sure that the workflows and letting collaborators sign off on important steps digitally. They've done some pretty cool things, secured huge clients such as Sony Music Group, Universal Music Group, and even Nielsen, as well as raising upwards of $1 million in funding and close to $2 million in revenue by the end of this year. That's impressive. I gotta say, that's very impressive.
Definitely. And I mean, Marcus as an entrepreneur, his story is it's a very inspiring story. I mean, he started out as a kid. He taught himself how to code by writing it on paper and going to community colleges to practice. And then he had a successful consulting firm that he sold. He had a successful fashion company, a fashion apparel company as well too. And then he just combine some of his experiences to work on Jammber. And so the guy definitely has a story that embodies what it takes to identify an opportunity and execute to make the opportunity happen and have a successful business doing it.
Yeah, and the one of the things that really stands out to me is about the commitment. He literally was based in Chicago when they first started working on the startup, and within a couple months they got accepted into an accelerator program in Nashville, Tennessee. So literally, he tells the story of buying his home and then 2 months later having to move his whole life to Nashville. And you can't tell me that's not commitment. He's literally doing what it takes to make sure that his company is where he wants it to get, where he's trying to get it to. So yeah, like I said, definitely make sure you get your pen and paper and take notes, because there's a lot of great gems here. And let's get into it, man.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Cool breeze.
So I'm super excited for today's episode. Here sitting down with Marcus Cobb, the co-founder and CEO of Jammber, and it's really exciting to be with you today, because I mean, just
Thanks, man.
for our listeners, I mean, like this guy has been on Forbes, Chicago Tribune. I mean, it's been raising, you know, a good penny with this company, like 1.3 million since like 2015. Has customers in multiple countries around the world. It's just exciting to see this. And one, plus he's from the great city of Chicago. Well, he based out of the great city of Chicago, and I'm from Chicago. That's home. And I'm living in Nashville right now, so I get someone who's
We have the exact same stomping grounds there, man.
exactly. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool to have you here today and really just break down and get into the details of your story and learn more about the person behind all the great press you're having with your company. So
happy to be here, man. I'm excited. This is it's always, I think, an honor just to have a forum and kind of share our story. So I'm ready to jump in.
And one thing that I actually want to just kind of throw in there as well, because this is a very big deal, right? The music industry it's a very interesting time right now, and the fact that you're able to create a technology that garners customers like Sony, Nielsen. I mean, that is a big deal, because for the longest time, a lot of these companies were kind of pushing away technology and pushing the transition from technology. And the fact that you're able to kind of get through those doors and secure those companies as clients is a very huge deal. So anybody that's listening, make sure, especially if you're interested in music, this is an episode that you definitely want to pay attention to.
I appreciate that, man. That's gracious. It's been a pretty crazy ride. I mean, as we get into it more, I think you'll find that as revelational and luminescent as it's becoming, none of it was planned this way. And I think serendipity is a really important ingredient, of the entrepreneur journey. So I'm looking forward to explaining that further.
We're going to get into that story real quick, but we have to do something that we do on every show. We always ask our guests, and this would probably be a great question for you, because you're in music.
No pressure.
Tell you myself, we're big music fans, hip hop specifically, but really all genres. And so we always like to ask, like, what's that one hip hop song that you listen to before an important pitch or a big meeting, or just that song that gets you in the zone?
Man, it's funny because most of my music, I'm pretty commercial in my music. I listen to was kind of on the far end of the spectrum, but there's this kid named Corey 4, who I know dropped an album called Paradox, his EP. Just him and his cousins just cutting it, in the basement. And he has this song on there called Used to It. That song, first of all, it's progressive, so it's a little grungy, but that beat is just cold, man. It reminds me of back in the day, Mama said knock you out, that same kind of just get in the gym and push iron. And every time I'm down or stressed out or just, looking for that edge, every time I play that song, it just has this beat to it, so I would definitely, off the top of my head, I would go with that one.
What was the name of the artist again? Give him some free pub, why not?
Yeah, why not, man? Spread the love, right? Corey, Khori. He's actually going to be performing in Nashville tomorrow at this event called Who Knew, which we'll talk about later if you want. But Khori, and Paradox is the EP. I think it's Paradox 4 specifically. So that kid is talented, man. I'm pretty selective, as you can imagine. I hear music every day of my life, a lot of new music, so I won't say I'm getting jaded, but I definitely perk up really quickly when I hear something special, and I think he's got that.
The event that he's performing at tomorrow, is that one of the Jammber sessions that you guys sponsor, or is it something else?
Yeah, we sponsor it. It's a pretty altruistic event. This guy, Tom Truitt, puts it on as this big meetup. It's called Who Knew? And anyone in Nashville's probably heard of it. It's got about 500 people. It'll be a city winery tomorrow. I think doors open at 5:30. So it's so powerful, man, that with Jammber we have this platform now where I'm able to open doors for artists. Actually, everyone on my team. This is a big part of our mission. Even though we're a technology company, tomorrow's a great example of that, where Tom Truitt put together this format called The Pitch, and it's a live showcase of 9 independent artists and bands, and they're going to be showcasing in front of A&R executives from Sony and Warner, Spotify.
Awesome.
Pandora,
That's
and it's huge, man. We did it before with music supervisors, who are the people that are in charge of the music you hear in music and television, like for ABC, Grey's Anatomy, Scandal,
Wow.
EA games like UFC, etc. And so we were able to change some lives that way, and just by being a part of it. So it's really close, near dear to my heart, and it'll be tomorrow, like I said, Thursday, was it 7/20, July 20th. So feel free to come on by. I think tickets are like $20. So it is almost sold out though. So no pressure, but it is almost sold out.
Oh, man.
But yeah, man, it's just beautiful. Jamber's at such an interesting intersection because our agenda is different than a typical industry agenda. We're here to serve, and we'll talk more about that. But because of that, with the people we are serving, it gives us influence and lets us give this back door open for artists that might not have it otherwise. So it's a big part of what we do.
Before even the idea for LinkedIn for musicians, right? And before you actually started working on Jammber, can you kind of give us, what your background was? What were you guys doing before that? Did you have your co-founder ready? What was the process that's really sparked the idea for LinkedIn for musicians?
Yeah, man. Well, when I was 2 years old, no, I'm just joking. I feel like the story doesn't really have a beginning, but I'm going to jump in right before we found the whole LinkedIn thing. Truth be told, I had a software company before, and I sold that software company pre-revenue for a good chunk of cash. And I was really good at software. That was my gift. I'd worked for multiple startups and could write software. Now, that doesn't mean for entrepreneurs out there who are not good at software, you should go code. That's my gift. There's plenty of gifts out there that people build companies with every day. But for me, that was it. And so everyone kind of encouraged me to start a consulting company again. And we did. And we grew that consulting company to about 5 million or so in revenue. And I met a friend of mine and said, hey, man, look, I need some help running this. And he came on and joined it. Fast forward, I hated that leap job. I hated it, man. I hated chasing clients, and like every time a project was over, we had to scramble for the next project, and I just had no passion about it, and ended up going to TEDx Midwest, where it really spoke to my soul, reminded me to get back to the basics of what actually makes me happy. I was doing what people said I was good at and said I should do, but what actually made me happy. And I did. My boy's like, well, what other ideas do you have, man? So I did a show and tell of these companies, and we created criteria. It had to, number one, be something we were happy and excited to do. It had to change lives in a positive way. It had to have reoccurring models because we hated trading hours for time. It's very difficult to scale. It had to have the potential of being $1 billion company in our wildest dreams, and it had to have the potential of changing the world. And so we went through that criteria and just kind of did show and tell, song and dancing from a whiteboard, and it came across this one. And when we almost literally quit overnight. Like, our clients stopped getting phone calls. I don't recommend doing that. That was a bad idea. But we were so just basically, man, screw it. We're jumping off this train. And we actually did close out our clients gracefully, most of them, and immediately started working on, it had a horrible name. I won't even say what the name was, but it wasn't Jammber yet. And we just started kind of plowing away at it. But we were entrepreneurs, so we might have been a little cocky because we've been doing it for a while. And we got into 1871 and thrown into the ecosystem, and it helped propel us forward. 1871 is a Google Entrepreneur Center, which is this network of things like 1871 across the world that have a special relationship with Google, and they can reach out to each other that way. It just so happens that the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, the Nashville EC, is a Google Entrepreneur Center as well. And so the Nashville EC was launching this accelerator called Project Music. And an accelerator is basically a boot camp for startups where they give you money, they give you mentorship, and they try to help you scale really fast. And this one was specifically for music technology. So they came to tour 1871. 1871 said, hey, you guys should consider going, to Nashville for this accelerator. And we're like, nah, we have no desire to move to Nashville at all. We're cool here. We're not going anywhere. But lo and behold, that changed our lives.
We're definitely going to dive into that, but I'm going to have you rewind back to some of the beginning times, specifically, when you were, at that beginning phase of the crafting up that idea. And so I know that was probably more so during your time in Chicago when you were originally working out 1871. Share with us your story from that original idea to the beginnings of when Jammber was starting up in your mind.
it really, long story short, I've had, and honestly, we gotta have drinks. So you might need like a 3-part series for this, man. But long story short, we really want to be the LinkedIn for music industry. We were trying to put together a girl band with a producer friend of mine from Bad Boy and some friends from Universal, a really amazing studio in Chicago, and it was just really hard to do. When we asked people, where do you go to network, where do you go to discover talent, it was Reverb Nation and Craigslist. And in my opinion, if you're going to Craigslist for anything important, there's something wrong. That right there is an industry for you. So we started off trying to build that. And it wasn't too long before we got into Project Music. And it was in Project Music that we saw a whole different problem that led to where Jammber is today.
That's such a interesting story because, I think a lot of people, especially when they're, working on a business, really don't understand the difference between, essentially having customers pay for your time and pay for your product, right? And I think you really kind of hit on, when it comes to certain sorts of businesses, specifically like consulting businesses, a lot of times you have customers that are paying for your time. And from what you just said, it seemed like you were looking to, how can I be able to not necessarily have people pay for my time, but pay for technology and pay for a product, right?
Right, exactly, and that comes down to a personal goal. I'm from the hood. I'm from El Paso, Texas, and I grew up in some pretty rough streets. Okay. El Paso, yeah, and not that I was hardcore. I was always 4-eyed kid with books in my hand. The only reason I didn't get beat up more is I could play basketball a little bit. But it was really important to me to. Once I came across these gifts and the magic of computer software and some amazing mentors, I realized that while I was reading about Michael Dell, who started Dell Computers, and I was reading about Howard Schultz, who started Starbucks, and I was reading about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, I realized that none of these people looked like me. None of them were black, none of them were minority, very few of them were female. And I felt like I had an awesome opportunity to run that race. And so my personal goal was to be one of the first black, self-made billionaires in the technology space, to be like a black Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, not despite what Beyonce says. Black Bill Gates in the making. I'm sorry, Beyonce. I'm going to beat you for that. And it has very little to do with the money, but just making history and showing these kids a different frustrum, and that's really, really powerful. Sometimes we don't know we can fly until we see people that look like us who fly first, right? So that's really, really important to me. So when you look at that model and study business, it's not that hard. And with Google, everything you want to learn is pretty much accessible within a few types. But I had a fashion company, I had a consulting company, and I had now a SaaS company. And technology companies that become billion-dollar companies do so in about 5 to 7 years. Fashion takes 20 years, and consulting companies also take 20 years. And so when you just look at it through that lens as well, it became pretty obvious which route I should take to reach those goals.
So much valuable insight into everything you just shared right there. I kind of want to dive down deeper into one particular point because it's probably, I know it's definitely relevant for our listeners. And I mean, just to be straightforward, your self-taught comes from building up the skill sets that you've been able to garner for like as a technologist. I know you credit yourself to the School of Hard Knocks. So like, like what advice or do you have to share about coming from that route as a technologist?
If there is such a thing as self-taught, I mean, someone's writing the books that I'm reading, right? But sure. If there is such a thing as far as did I sit in a classroom at a college? No, I started my first business right after high school. But what I've learned about success is it's, for example, in my case, because I was pretty poor as a kid, I didn't have a computer, I didn't have a laptop, but I took a computer class in high school that got me hooked. And so after high school, I was using my little money I was making as a busboy working at Motown Cafe in Las Vegas. I went to high school in Las Vegas and buying computer books. And I would then write code on graph paper and walk to community college every day, use their computers and code all the time. That's all I did. It's a story now. At the time, I was just hungry, Like I was just like, wow, this is cool. This is fun. And that passion was building up a skill for me I never knew was going to change my life. I think that's true for a lot of people. a friend of mine, Daryl, is an attorney in Chicago, and he was best friends with a fantastic, legendary rapper named Common. When Common first started rapping, he just started rapping because it entertained his friends. So they'd all kind of stand around. He would drop a few lines with a voice of his, and next thing you know, he's a trendsetter, right? He's moving mountains. He's an actor, but it started with just that passion, that interest level, and that's really where it starts for all of us.
I think one of the important parts is kind of discussing the passion, right? And going from you talk about being in fashion to consulting, and now going to technology, and being able to kind of meld your interest in technology with your passion of music, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you do actually, make music, right? I think you're a songwriter or something.
Yeah, songwriter, and I sing as well, which is I'm songwriter. I play keys well enough to write, and I sing, which is probably what I'm best at. But yeah, I've been in music my whole life, though. I come from a family of musicians. My mom had us in choir, and I played the French horn in school because it was the free instrument, that kind of thing. But yeah. But you touched on it, Toy. It really is passion. And one of the things I hate about giving people my story is that there's a pressure to almost mimic the path, but everyone's path is different. But yes, the formula is pretty consistent with what you need to do. You have to have passion. You have to have work ethic. If luck is preparation meets opportunity, that's really it right there. If you prepare, it just seems like the opportunity always finds you. And that's what happened with us in Jammber. I never found a world I didn't even know. Matter of fact, this world didn't exist 5 years ago. Jammber could not have existed just 5 years ago, or at least gotten any customers and clients. And so the world has a way of working it out, in my opinion.
I totally agree. That's actually one of my favorite quotes. Luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And, talking about preparation, what's the story? Because, you have a co-founder, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing your co-founder was your former business partner on the consulting side before you guys transitioned to Jammber?
Yeah, that's correct. I actually have two co-founders now. The one you're talking about is a guy named Adam Claybaugh. He has since left to another venture. We're still really good friends. And then my other boy is Mangesh Bomkar, who is our CTO. But yeah, Adam was with me at the consulting company, and he was with me when we changed course from the LinkedIn thing to the workflow application we are today.
When you guys actually went into the Project Music Accelerator, did both of you move down to Tennessee for that accelerator program?
Grudgingly, yeah. And I cried. I was so upset, man. I'm an emotional person anyway when it comes to certain things. And I just got this great home that I absolutely loved in Chicago, right downtown. And like 2 months after I had to move to Nashville. And at that point in time, I didn't know what Nashville had to offer. I love Nashville now, but I was leaving home. Chicago's home for me. Same thing with him. He's born and raised in Chicago, but we jumped in our little cars and we drove the 7.5 hours, whatever it is, to Nashville. And we bounced around Airbnbs because first of all, note to self, y'all, if you're moving to Nashville, it's unlike any other city. Yeah, man. Everybody's moving here. There's no temporary housing. You're not going to just don't do it. Every Airbnb is like blocked for years out. Just, so you got to plan a little differently. We didn't know that. So we bounced around a lot, and we, a lot of hotels, motels, Airbnbs, but we both are we're pretty good at surrendering to the process. We believe in process, and it's just who we are. And one thing I'll say about us both is we have tremendous work ethic. I mean, we outwork almost everyone we know. So through that lens, Project Music was easier to go through with someone that had those same values. And we saw other companies go through it, I'm friends with all of them, who had a harder time because they were unequally yoked. They weren't pulling equally as hard or as passionately. So that's really, really important. If you partner with someone, make sure they pull as hard as you do.
I loved it when I read up on your story about Project Music experience, because it was literally from tacos and tequila to this is what we're going to pivot to and move forward. And Nashville has embraced you for that. I mean, you've been able to secure a lot of great relationships with the record labels and just different partners within the community. Could you share a little bit about how that the relationship and connection with the city has helped you grow the business?
Yeah, I think this is also one of the principles we're talking about that is a necessary part of success, and that's if there's only one door open, go through it, right? And that's where change and growth comes in a lot of times. We didn't want to go to Nashville. We didn't want to leave our families, and it was expensive. We also were entrepreneurs before, so we felt that we had the skills. We also had some money because I had a company I sold. We felt like we had everything we needed to make Jammber successful. We honestly, to add a little bit of salt to that, we started applying for Project Music, and then we started procrastinating because we really didn't want to do it. They called us and told us to finish our application, and for us, that was a sign in the universe to just see what happened. And then when we got accepted, they said, hey, you guys have 24 hours to decide if you want to be a part of this or not, which isn't typical, but it's just a situation they were in. And we're like, okay, well, we have nothing to lose. Why not? So when the door is knocking at you, you got to open that door. And that's what happened in our case. But yeah, Nashville as a community is why Jammber is growing so fast. Nashville as a music epicenter is unlike any place in the world, and we didn't know that, but it turned out to be true. We also were able to raise, I think, $1.3 million in Nashville, which is unheard of for a music technology company. So to say the community's embraced us is an understatement. So I agree with you on that, Ahmad. And that's why you'll hear me say it all the time. We will always have a presence in Nashville so long as our business is healthy, because we're here to serve. They helped. I like to say that Jammber was conceived in Chicago but born in Nashville.
I feel like I need to go to Nashville and see what Nashville is all about. You're making the city sound really dope, and considering that you're also from Chicago, you're like, okay, maybe Nashville's maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something there.
For us, in our case, I mean, if you're gonna be like a robotics company, I'm not sure I'd move to Nashville, but for a music technology company, it's really Nashville or LA, maybe New York, in the States. And then it's Toronto, Montreal, London, around the world. But Nashville is the reason I'll put it in the numbers. First of all, Nashville has more music industry professionals per capita than any city in the world by a factor of 2, with the exception of New York, which is 1.7. So that means for every one music person in New York, there's 1.7 here in Nashville. They also make 77% more income-wise than any other city in the world. So think about that. You have a dense population of musicians, but the talent level is so high, and there's so much professional work that they're still making a premium on salaries. Economics say their salaries should go down, right? Mm-hmm. So that says a lot about the city. It's also the only city that I know of where every aspect of the music business exists. Maybe LA can compete for that. But everything from printing sheet music and printing vinyl to record labels, A&R, publishers, PROs, all within literally 2 square miles of each other, there's no other place on earth that they can boast that. When you look at it through that lens and the talented musicians that are here, it's a great place to build what we're building in this case. Also, because of Project Music, it wasn't just Nashville, but Project Music was really run by former executive Joe Galante, CEO of Sony at one time. He's on the same levels as a Clive Davis, in my opinion. So everybody who we wanted to talk to, we got into doors with Universal and Warner and Sony and these world-changing companies because we were in Project Music. You know what I mean? And that's not something that we could have done on our own, being this aspiring company from Chicago.
Wow. So, obviously Project Music, had obviously a great impact on the success of Jammber and you as an entrepreneur. And that was actually kind of really leading into my next question was, you were talking about how, one, you've obviously had, several businesses that you worked on prior to working on Jammber in Chicago, right? And you felt that you had all the tools you needed to be successful in building Jammber before you moved to Tennessee.
Yeah, because I'm a very humble guy. That's why I'm really, really humble. I'm pretty confident about that. I'm just joking. Okay.
I'm humble, I'm pretty confident that I'm humble.
I'm pretty confident that I'm humble. Yeah. We had it all figured out, man.
Oh man, I need to use that in a meeting.
That's funny. I'm gonna steal that one too.
Sorry about that.
So you felt that you had the tools that you needed to be successful before you got into Project Music, and I was kind of curious to know, what were the different aspects of the Project Music program that you felt really put you guys in a position to be successful. Obviously you talked about the network, but I'm sure it's a 14-week program, right? Can you kind of talk us through how you were able to kind of build through that accelerator program?
Well, yeah, like I said, my boy Adam and I, we're Bulldogs, man, and we were the only company not from the Tennessee area, coming from Chicago. So I think in some ways we were underdogs, and we're very comfortable being underdogs because we're kind of like, fuck you, we'll figure it out. Don't underestimate us. That gives us a hunger, and that was an important ingredient, I think, too. It was what you made it. Really, the program director at the time, Heather McBee, is a lifer industry person, and she was hyper connected in the space. And even though she didn't know much about startups, she had amazing connections. So imagine you're in the music industry, right? Like for me, I'd been around the industry, but now we're taking this program. And for the first week, you have Daniel and the Great Lakes, this great indie band with, on Grey's Anatomy. They come and they talk with you, and they're showing you their music videos live. And Brett James, an amazing writer, is coming to you and talking about his experiences writing with Taylor Swift and Carrie Underwood. And then you're going to a radio station and getting a tour, and on the station, you're being immersed into that world, and it ignites your passion in a different way. The curriculum was important too. They forced us to go through customer discovery, 200 interviews, 400 interviews, and it was going through that. Adam and I rolled our eyes, man. We're like, come on, man. We know we're smart people. We're brilliant. We got this figured out. We're not going to do these stupid interviews, but we'll do it because you made us. And we
humble and confident.
Humble and confident about being humble. Yeah. We submitted to the process again, right? It's like we have a trainer or a coach, and it was through that process that we discovered a problem that was much bigger and much more important than being LinkedIn for the music industry.
I kind of just want to pick up on that note because we wouldn't be here today if like your product wasn't really fulfilling a need within the marketplace. There's been in essence, I'm not sure if you were probably even prepared for the amount of success that you're having. Like the wave has been strong, and like, so how do you manage that current as you still been able to onboard customers and like from just beyond Nashville to all over the world?
Well, actually, I was fortunate that I worked for a fast growing company in Chicago called Tickets Now, where we grew. I think I was the second technology employee there. And when I was there, I want to say they were doing around $20 million a year in revenue selling tickets. And by the time I left a few years later, we were doing $300 million in revenue and sold the company to Ticketmaster for just under $300 million. And we went from 20 employees to 150 employees. And that experience is invaluable when it comes to sustaining growth. But it's not growth, it's the hard part. The hard part about growth is a lot of the books, you have to read them differently. A lot of books are, growth hacking. How do you get more growth? How do you get more customers? That wasn't Jamber's problem. Our problem was, when do we stop getting customers? When do we not board beta list users? What do we do? And it was a paradigm shift for our advisors, mentors, everyone else. And that was different for us. We had to really try to be scientific about it. And I think that's where most of our mistakes were. The other side of it is, within that growth period, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Every day can't be a good day, right? So, you're waiting for, you're waiting to wake up from this dream. Every sales meeting my team goes into, they're still surprised they've sold the product. Now, they've sold the product in almost every meeting they've been in, but they're always surprised. Like, Marcus, you never believe we sold it. Like we did yesterday. Yeah, just like we did yesterday. It's awesome. And that's because it's such a magical experience and none of us have had before. And it's as an entrepreneur, a lifer. I mean, I'm that guy who I live and breathe being an entrepreneur. It's such a privilege to be a part of this magical moment, and you can't plan these. They luck is opportunity meeting preparation, man, and I'm sitting right in the center of that.
But like, what specifically when it comes to like your the actual like the product? You had the ideas bubbling in your head, and you had to actually get that into the software and like from the customer discoveries. How did that collide to actually become this product that you can sell so easily?
Yeah, so from a pragmatic standpoint, and I'm going to zigzag a little bit to give you the most succinct answer, but when I became a fashion designer, which is a story for a different time, it set me free in a lot of ways because it was accidental. I can't draw, I can't sew. I was actually trying to open a retail store and it wasn't a good time. It was 2008. And my friends just kind of jokingly encouraged me to try to design. And I did know a little bit of Photoshop. So I started with that. I would get pictures off the internet and then just kind of tweak those pictures in Photoshop. It might just be the color. It might be a different cut, whatever it was. And I started off with women's intimate apparel, activewear, and shirts, those kind of things. And I created a whole catalog. And the more people liked it, the more my my confidence grew, right? And so I was like, just keep like show and tell, mommy, look at what I did, dad, look what I did, kind of that thing. And that was an important phase, because while I did not like the economics of the fashion world, and that company, Mark Wayne, did pretty well, it set me free and made me realize and accept the fact that what I am is I'm a designer, and technology is one medium for design, and music is a medium for design, and fashion was a medium for design. And what I love to do more than anything in the world is create a product experience, create an experience for people, like create something that puts a smile on their face, that entertains them in some way. So when I had that revelation, it just set me free, man. Like, fashion changed my life. So you fast forward, I was fortunate enough that I'd been in software long enough. I worked for Microsoft, I worked for GE, I worked for Citigroup, and I was lucky enough to garner the discipline from these companies. So I know what a product lifecycle looks like, to your point. I don't believe in just thinking you have it all figured out and just building some widget and running with it. I do think there's an element of that, but listening is the most important part. Active listening. Henry Ford said if I would ask people what they wanted, they would ask me for a faster horse. People can't always tell you what they want, but what they really, do they want a faster horse, or do they want to go faster? Right? And that's what's the discipline in my opinion, serving people is your customers, and active listening and giving them what they're asking for, and then taking those requests and putting them into a feature set, prioritizing that feature set based on the greater good, and then delivering on those promises is the pipeline. That's the pragmatic aspect of that. For me, that meant that as good as I thought I was, as comfortable as I was with software, I had to hire people that could execute that, because you can't scale as a sole proprietor, right? You have to bring in people that are better than you, smarter than you. As cliche as it sounds, I know it's popular these days. Hire people you would work for. I get it, Mark Zuckerberg. That's what I'm working on. But I think it really is true. You have to hire people that can bring your dream to life, but also add color to it that you yourself can't add. For the success, when we hit a note for the labels, what first happened is after we pivoted, you touched on the story, my boy and I went to an office, and we were asking about this LinkedIn thing. We have it all figured out too. We're like, we're going to have like private gates, and you can only talk to people that are at your level. It's going to be really sexy and cool. And while we're discovering that, there was this office with this conference room table full of checks. And I've said the story 1,000 times. And all the checks were stamped return to sender, like they just got dumped on the conference table. And when I asked the person we're talking to, what are all these checks? And she said, yeah, they're return to sender because we pay musicians to create this music, and we send them paper checks. There's no concept of direct deposit in the music industry for these musicians. So we send them paper checks, and it takes us 3 months to 2 years to pay them. And we're like, what? Why? I'm like, yeah, and then they put, their wrong name in, or they put their band name in, and they can't cash it because they don't have a bank account for that. And so they get returned to us, and we have no way to get them back. And there's millions of dollars sitting here. We're not talking about the money that's being split up somewhere else in the world. We're talking about money that went out to these creatives and never made it to the kitchen table. When you look at the average income for most professional musicians at $45,000 a year, and I'm seeing millions of dollars sitting here on the table, that moved us, and we had this pit in our stomach, and that's why we went to the Bakersfield tacos in Nashville. We didn't say a word from the time we left the office to when we sat down at the bar at Bakersfield Tacos. We didn't say a word, man. And we asked for a shot of tequila. I want to say it was Tres Agaves tequila. I'm not endorsing that. I'm just saying it's what we wanted. And we threw back a shot, and we're like, we got to pivot, bro. Meaning, we got to change course to fix that problem. And I know, man. Let's do it. And we did our shot, had some chicken mole tacos, and went upstairs and redid our whole business plan. At Project Music, they made you pitch every Friday, kind of practice your pitch, your investor pitch. And this is week 12 of 14. Wow. This is not the time to change your mind and rewrite your business plan. No one knew we did it because I think it was on a Thursday. We pitched on Friday, stayed up all night redoing our business plan. And I remember so clearly when we pitched, and this is important, I think, for entrepreneurs, if you guys don't mind, when we pitched, all the musicians in the room, or musician related, gave up and stood up and gave us a standing ovation after our pitch. This DocuSign meets PayPal. That's all it was. And standing ovation, and all the investors in the room went like, what the fuck did Marcus just do? He's lost his mind. And in fact, one of those investors literally cornered me right after our pitch. And the story's out there that you mentioned. And she goes, Marcus, This is a horrible idea. No one's going to invest in an accounting program. Like, it's not an accounting program. It's not sexy. The LinkedIn thing is sexy. It's big. You're going to lose at least 70% of investor interest if you go forward with this idea. And I said, you know what? I can't explain it yet, but I'm telling you there's something here. I hear what you're saying, but I'm telling you there's something here. So we're sticking with it. And I went home to my apartment. My boy, Adam, flew back to Chicago to be with his family. And I cried, man, just out of tears of fatigue. No shame in that. I was exhausted.
That's real.
I sat there, and I said I'm from the hood, right? So at that point in time, I was wearing my blazer, my V-neck, and my nice shoes. That shit went away. I put on some basketball sweatpants, my Air Force Nikes, my skin hat flipped backwards, and I went back to the Entrepreneur Center, like, hey, yo, what's up, y'all? How you doing? I just completely went back to my roots, and I stayed in myself. Fast forward, that was April. That same investor was our very first investor of November that year when she saw the traction we were getting. So there's something to be said about the intuition that entrepreneurs have with the right data. Last to tie it off, when we show just the idea on paper to Big Machine, which is Scott Borchetta and Andrew Katz, they have Taylor Swift and Florida Georgia Line and Steven Tyler. We just showed them on paper, really timid, maybe like a couple PowerPoint slides of what it might do that we put together in PowerPoint. So there's no app, there's no code, there's nothing. We already spent money building the LinkedIn platform. In fact, it was done. So we showed it to them. They said, where do we sign? We want it right now.
Wow.
And we're like, wow, okay, that's surreal. We took it to Sony Nashville. They said the exact same thing. Before we wrote a line of code, we had, I think, 25 letters of intent from some of the largest companies in the world. And it was surreal, right? Like, what do you do with that?
That's market validation right there.
That's market validation right there, man. That's why she wrote that check. So, and now it became a process of executing. And that's where we're at today.
Wow. So just really quick, I want to just make sure everybody heard this point right here. Literally, without any line of code ever been written up, you guys were able to secure customers. And I think that's very important because essentially your MVP was, this is, the problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? We love
100%, man. 100%. You got to be aware of your fears, and you have to be really honest with yourself. A lot of people are afraid of rejection. I know I am. And I've read the lean methodology and lean startup. Rather have been lean methodology courses. But you know what? We still started writing code first for the LinkedIn thing because it's what we can do. We were comfortable in that place. And we were like just kind of hiding in the caves building this code because it gave us a certain sense of satisfaction and success to build something. And that was all waste, which is what Eric speaks about in the book, right? And here we have a few PowerPoint slides that we put together in a couple hours, and we get interest from the largest companies in the world. That is the way it should be done. If there's a true value there, you can sell it on paper. I don't care what it is.
Yeah, this is definitely, probably one of the most serendipitous stories I've heard, and I think it's just very inspiring, just based off the fact that one, you moved to a completely different city. After 2 months after you bought a place, right? That's commitment right there, number one, right? And then from there, working on an idea for literally 3 months, and then pivoting literally 2 weeks prior to the end of the program, having an investor saying, don't do it, still moving forward with the gumption to actually pitch this to very huge companies without a line of code. Like that's, and then not only that, securing those companies as customers.
Right. Oh, and that's a huge privilege, right? Like, when does that happen? If you study, especially American entrepreneurship, that's actually how it happens. More times than not, it is serendipity. None of these people were geniuses, no matter who you talk about. I mean, Bill Gates is probably a genius on an IQ level, but that was very serendipitous. When they got opportunity to sell DOS, this basic software to run computers, to IBM, a lot of people don't realize that his mom was on the board of IBM. It wasn't just accident. And on top of that, they bought the software from another guy who made it. And there were all these really interesting things. They were working on the software before they sold it while on the plane to that place. Apple was actually their first big customer besides IBM. They made Excel for Apple, and then they became rivals. So the same is true for Pixar, the same is true for Walt Disney, the same is true for everyone. It's really about staying the course, listening to the universe and the people around you, taking in the data as fast as you can and making decisions that make sense. And sometimes that decision is no, we're going to stay here. And sometimes that decision is yes. And no one has your intuition. Your intuition is based on your frame of reference, and it's really important to trust that. And when you're not sure, get more data. And if you don't have enough data, make a decision anyway. Make one you can afford. A brief mentor of mine, Chris Galvin, was CEO of Motorola. His grandfather started Motorola, and Motorola was an innovator to the extreme. And he said, Marcus, we'll take any risk so as long as we don't take 3 types of risk at the same time. And that's technology risk, territory risk, and financial risk. So he would never take risk on any 2 fronts at any given time. And I use that discipline in my life today. I only make mistakes I can afford to make. I don't bet the farm. I don't bet my house anymore. I did that. I lost it twice. Not a good idea. There's a time for it. It's a great romantic story, but chances are in today's world, you don't have to do that. So just be really disciplined about the risk management. I'll say it this way. Everyone says that entrepreneurs are gamblers. I think good entrepreneurs are risk averse. I think they're very scientific in the decisions they make. And that's an important part to find that nuance between risk and reward.
There's just so many gems. We always say that on the show when there's like a good point, and there's just so many gems. And I want to touch on a little bit though. We're big on execution, especially as it relates to entrepreneurship. That's what's going to move the needle forward. You got the letters of intent from major companies. You haven't wrote a single line of code yet. What was your frame of mind with executing to respond to the deliverable that your clients were expecting now?
Well, I think the important part is what made it hard. So I always think that chief executive officer means chief executive officers, and you're the get shit done guy. It's your job to make sure that you're meeting your goals. When you're a venture-backed company and you're counting on investors in that way, that greatly shapes your trajectory and the milestones you have to hit to continue to raise capital. And a lot of people don't understand that when they first start raising money. They just think we'll raise money. But what happens is for each stage your company is at, you're competing for that money with other companies, other startups at those different levels. And your numbers have to outpace theirs. So in some ways, your goals are driven by the market. It's usually going to be revenue. It's going to be, and not just how much money you're making, but how much you're growing that money every month. It's going to be numbers as far as your users, how many you have, how often you're using it. And so you have to understand where you're at as a startup. And this is really for venture-backed companies, where you're at as a startup and where you're at in the community of startups at that stage. And then you work backwards from there. So at Jammber, it's our goal to remain in the 80th percentile or higher of startups at our stage. And that means that we want to grow revenue. We're looking to hit 2 million this year revenue. We'll triple that next year, triple that the year after that, right? How do we do that? And what does that growth look like? So when you have the goals, it's pretty easy to work backwards because SaaS is not a new model. Software as a service has been around since the 90s, thanks to Salesforce, right? But you have to have a model that you follow. From an execution standpoint, in my opinion, it's really about the team you select. If we're building a football team or a basketball team or whatever it might be, you got to get the right people in the right places, man. And that's so hard to do. My biggest mistakes over the past 3 years have been wrong hires, bad hires. Every other mistake we can handle pretty well and fix, but bad hires are the hardest mistakes to recover from. So that's a key. But to tie it off, now that you have a team, you've got your goals, how do you actually execute? And I think that comes down to the culture. You have to create an environment, in my opinion, where people are free and safe to create. You have to set them free and let them show their superpowers and let them grow with the company. Because if you give them goals, swing for the fences, get a touchdown, steal the ball, they will more times than not accomplish those goals if they're in an environment where they're safe to do so. And that's execution is about those ingredients to me. Everything else is secondary.
There's just so much information here. And I feel like there's no way that anybody listening to this is not going to be able to take something away from that that's going to help move their business and take their business to the next level. So first of all, just thank you, because even as we're talking right now, I'm learning a lot, just based off a lot of the stuff that you just kind of went over. And I really wish that we could keep this thing going, because I feel like there's so many other things that I'm sure that you have some really great insight about. Seriously. And I think I might actually just maybe pick your brain offline. No, seriously,
Well, you're in Nashville, so like,
Yeah, we just get coffee. I mean, like I said, I might be drinking tequila right now. I can either confirm or deny, but feel free to come over and join. I think I want to sum it up as just a couple things if I can, in 10 seconds here. Serve the greater good. The amount of money you make is a direct correlation to how many lives you impact. If you help other people's dreams come true, they'll help your dreams come true. And I can always tell how passionate someone is about their craft or their dreams by how much they study it. And I think within those elements, everything else works itself out.
we do this one thing on the show. It's like 4 rapid fire questions that we ask at the end. Cool.
I'm ready.
All right. Awesome. Well, the first question then is, what top 3 tools would you have recommended to yourself when you first started working on the idea?
Paper, pen and paper. I should write more. Small notebooks. Evernote or Bear to share with my team. And a flask.
For the nerves. That's a good one. So the next question within the gem round, I guess you might have just touched on it right now, right? The flask to take the edge off, but outside of that, what do you do to keep yourself sane?
I work out at least a couple times a week. I shut it down all the way when it's time. I don't stay glued. I rarely email people on the weekends, and I stay close to the music. So I listen to music day in and day out. I basically wore out the Starboy album from the weekend, and right now I'm really big into Halsey as well. So those 3 things, I just kind of get away. I like to vibe. I'm a vibe person, and I literally leave work at work the best I can.
The next question that we asked during the gym round, what is your favorite business book?
I really liked, for me, Pour Your Heart Into It by Howard Schultz. It's an older book about his early days in starting Starbucks, but I still borrow lessons from that book, like when they changed the name to Starbucks, that have never left me. I think it's a small book, it's easy to read. I've read hundreds of books, but that one has a special place in my heart.
And then the last question of the gem round, what is something that you do not want an app to replace?
Hugging.
Okay.
I think the social space, I don't want you to send me a hug over an emoji. Like, give me a hug. Skin to skin, energy to energy, vibe to vibe. Technology is supposed to bring us closer together. I think there's a diminishing return that where actually gets us further apart, and we get uncomfortable with sharing personal space with people. And I don't think that should be the case.
Thank you so much for joining the show, man. And if there's any information you want to share for them to connect with you, learn more about you and the business that you're building with Jammber.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wide open. I'm on Twitter-ish, so at Jammber CEO, Twitter at Jammber CEO, one word. On Instagram, I'm Music Fashion Tech, one word. Music Fashion Tech, which is my life. That's really where I'm at. Please reach out, and especially if you got to hear me here on Innovator Tribe, I want to know that. So don't be shy.
Thanks again, Marcus. CEO, co-founder of Jammber, changing the music industry game. Definitely pay attention to this startup, because they're making huge waves, and I'm just excited to see where you guys go next.
Yeah, man, I look forward to this again. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and I'll talk to you soon.